Welcome back to the Neverland Book Club. It's been about 6 months already of this year, 2024, just halfway gone, and I'm about 20 books behind in my reading goal. I have about the same reading goal every year because I value consistency in my life. I don't like surprises. I like having a plan. Whether or not I stick to the plan is beside the point. Nonetheless, planning is a start. Therefore, have a plan. What was I talking about? Yes, being behind in my plan. The word has lost all meaning. I've never done one of these specific videos before, but at the same time, this is the only type of video I make for years on this channel. A wrap-up. This video is essentially a wrap-up. But instead of discussing every single book I read so far this year, because neither me nor you have that kind of time or interest in such a thing, I'd like to discuss the best, the worst, and the in-between. So without further ado, let's dive in. I'm gonna start from best to worst. Best titles so far: Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I know I've briefly discussed Divine Rivals in a previous video, and upon completing Ruthless Vows, I wanted to make a dedicated video for this duology with the intention of discussing the beauty in such a well-crafted, unique, and original story. In a world of remakes and sequels, an original idea is like a flash in the pan, and this, for me, felt like that shimmering spot of gold amongst the mundane shades of gravel. Now, I won't say, oh, I've never come across a story like this before, because I have. That's not to say the story isn't original. The emotions, the mindset, the mood these books put you in, I felt were akin to that of, say, The Night Circus, or If We Were Villains. The prose takes you to a place other than reality, while the story takes you to a place you wish never to visit. The romance is innocent yet devastating all at once, and the characters are more than merely memorable. I think of these characters often, as though I knew them in a dream. That's how you know you've come across a well-rounded, simply put, good book. With Divine Rivals, the world and characters are set up in a way where every action, every piece of dialogue, every story beat is believable. As unbelievable and fantastical as the story may be, what you feel is real. That's what I love so much about fantasy. Before starting this channel, I didn't read much fantasy. I'm grateful for being online in the book community for allowing me to be more open-minded about what I'm reading and how I'm reading it, so that I could have experiences such as this. These books, meant for a young audience perhaps, have more lessons learned about friendship, love, indomitable spirit, political propaganda. I could go on and on and on. And I'm not sure if I have a point exactly. This is more of a rambling of why I personally enjoyed these books more than speaking on the plot, because I think with a story like this, the plot can come secondary. But if anything I've just said resonates with you on any level and you haven't read these books yet, please do. They are worth your time and attention. Next, Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I've discovered Miss Jimenez this year through a coworker and am so grateful for it. She's my new obsession. Abby, not my coworker. Don't call HR. I've read 4 of Abby's books at this point, this one being my absolute favorite. This was a 4.75 star read for me. Why isn't it a 5-star? I don't know. It perhaps made me look in the mirror for too long, and for that, I knocked it down a quarter of a point. Abby Jimenez's stories, at least the ones I've read so far, are so successfully character-driven, it's almost annoying. Her characters are people. They're real people. There's nothing fictitious about them other than the fact they don't exist. Which almost isn't true, because she speaks on how some of her characters are based off real people in her life, so her books are technically nonfiction. That's right, I read nonfiction. But specifically, the main male character in Yours Truly. How much I related to this character was actually unsettling. Some find solace in being accurately represented in shows and films and books, but when it comes to things you hate most about yourself written into a character, and then reading that character be loved and accepted in the presence of those traits, not because of them or despite them, but just alongside them, reading that character try and fail and try again to overcome their shortcomings in the same way you've watched yourself in the past, and still they get their happy ending, I cried. This book was a release. It felt like being seen in both the worst and best ways possible. A diagnosis definitely does not define you. We've all heard it before. It's cliche at this point, but it's true to a degree. It can define a lot of your everyday. It can define the majority of the decisions you make and what your life looks like. It can, and that sucks, but it doesn't have to. And sometimes we can all use that kind of reminder. And books like this serve that purpose. I remember Jacob's character, the chapters told from his perspective and reading his inner thoughts, and then reading Brianna's chapters, seeing how Jacob is perceived through her eyes. It's the fear of being misunderstood, the realization of the inevitability of that fear, and pushing through anyway that just got me. These two characters see one another in the end, and that's the whole point of romance. If you haven't read Abby Jimenez, please do. Her version of romance is as far away from romantasy as possible. It's so real and raw, and I appreciate it so much. Read yours truly. Just read it, please. It won Book of the Year last year from Book of the Month Club, so you know it's good. Next is a book I have not yet completed upon making this video, but I already know it's going to be one of my top 10 of the year and one of my favorite books ever, for completely different reasons than the books discussed thus far. Crescent City 3, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. I don't need to go into great detail about why I'm enjoying this book so much. I have about 300 pages left, and we all know what happens in the last 200 pages of an SJM book. It's about to go down, and I'm so excited for it. Okay. I am trying my best to just savor it. This is the slowest I've ever read a book by Sarah J. Maas, and it's not because of lack of interest or excitement. It's because I simply don't want it to be over. I know there's going to be a long time to wait before she puts out anything else, and I'm trying to just make it last. These books are they're so much fun. They're fun to read, they're fun to talk about, the characters are fun to hang out with, and the world is so unlike our own. It's just the ultimate escape. And this third installment of this series in particular just hits the spot. It's so satisfying because of the way the previous book ended. However, I just wish there was more of that crossover. I'm at the part now where there's less of that and more of the events happening on Midgard, and I miss seeing those ACOTAR characters interact with the concepts of this world, but there's so much potential here. SJM is a mastermind of story and pace and plot. Say what you will, that's my opinion, and I take it as fact. I'll hear no criticism, thank you. Now for our middle tier. These are not exactly 5-star reads, but they've been memorable throughout this half of the year nonetheless. First, we have none other than our good friend Ali Hazelwood coming in with her first romantasy title, Bride. The title could have been better. Considering how clever her other titles were, I was expecting something a bit more. But let's talk about the content. This book was fun. It was. I think with Ali, I hold a lot of reservations because I want her to succeed so much. I look up to her in a way that's a bit more personal than the way I look up to other authors. So when she goes outside of her usually scheduled genre, I'm both intrigued and surprised when I enjoy those books, perhaps more than her expected hits. Check and Mate, for example, her first YA title, I absolutely loved. Same with this one. I enjoyed it far more than expected. And you could tell she did a bit of research into monster romances before writing this book. We have some of your staples when it comes to romantasy and spice, specifically mating and nodding. If you don't know what nodding is, it's something very real and also thankfully very not. It's in the animal world. The mating science and lore when it comes to mythical creatures like vampires and werewolves have their own set of rules in this world, and that's okay. It doesn't take up too much page time, but it is efficiently discussed to the point of suspending your disbelief enough to enjoy the story, and that's a precarious thing to achieve. The main characters weren't carbon copies of previous characters. They were memorable and had their own voice, and the spice was pretty spicy. It's okay. I'm actually excited to read Ali's new book coming out. It actually comes out tomorrow by the time I'm recording this, which is funny. It'll be out by the time this video's out, but by the time of recording this, it comes out tomorrow. And I'd like to go into it with higher expectations because I do feel like she's getting better. I just didn't like Love Theoretically. That one was a complete miss for me. But these, as of late, I've really been enjoying. So I will be picking up the new book and reading it. Okay, so I've known for a while now that Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote a number of books before The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but for some reason, I'd only deep dove into the titles she released after. That's since changed. I read One True Loves and Forever Interrupted. The former was good, the latter was amazing. However, neither hit the same spot as Hugo, and I don't think anything will, to be honest. That one is just solid from start to finish. What I really enjoy about Taylor Jenkins Reid's stories is that they are love stories. And they are romance, but they are also really not. They're almost steeped too strongly in the reality of our existence. The truth of every fairy tale is that it ends, that it could end in any way possible at any time. Now, That's not to say you have to feel the imminent demise of your fairy tale so much that you forget to enjoy it. Quite the contrary. Stories like this, at least for me, give me a newfound sense of appreciation for the fairy tale I've made for myself. Forever Interrupted was not what I expected because not only does it deal with the heaviest burden of grief, it also addresses the unexpected love you can find in unexpected people. If you haven't read this one, I don't want to spoil it for you, of course, but it is not a happy ending. Not a lot of Reed stories really are, and I love that because it remains true to the stories, to the characters. The two people who do find one another in the wake of such unbelievable grief in this book is unexpected and almost uncomfortable, but it's exactly what both characters need to find themselves on the other side. And I love that for them. I loved this love story because it was believable, and I love fairy tale love stories because, you know what, they're also pretty believable too. And one last thing while we're on the topic, I listened to this book, and at the end there was a small interview between the author and an audiobook narrator, and Reed said something that really resonated with me, and I'll add it right here in her own words, just real quick.
I really do believe that there are times when we are in pain and we cannot access our own grief in our body. And when there is art, whether it's a TV show or a movie or a book or a song that's able to unlock that for us, it can let go of some of our grief too.
That so accurately describes my love for sad stories. I couldn't have said it better myself. Okay. This next one was on the heels of binge watching the first part of season 3 of Bridgerton, Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. This felt like reading about Eloise's character at 25. I won't give this one too much time because I didn't feel like it was particularly deep. However, it was fun, it was memorable, and it hit that Regency itch I had after that carriage scene cliffhanger. Just don't get me started. By the time this is out, the second part might be out, I think, and I'm all in. Also, excuse me, Mr. Colin Bridgerton, you shouldn't be having threesomes, sir. You should be yearning. It's so jarring, the stark differences between the experiences of young men and young women of this time. Like, insert himself from a married woman? It's funny and it's not, you know? Anyway, yeah, I only added this title because I wanted to quickly rant about Bridgerton. But if you've been hungover from the show, this book is a quick, easy, fun read. The spice is pretty good, the references made me smile, and there's a solid plot. The characters are likable, and it reads like a Netflix show. I will definitely be continuing this series. All right, last on our middle list is Friend Zone, another Abby Jimenez title. Now, I already rambled on and on about why I love Abby's stories, so I won't repeat myself, but I will say this title made it on this list because of its themes in women's health and infertility and the male responses to such things. Working in infertility, I know the odds, I know the statistics, but most of all, I know the resilience of these women. Whenever anyone asks me what my favorite part of my job is, I always say when we transfer an embryo and I see the flash on the ultrasound. Now, technically that flash is just the media that the embryo is in, flashing into the uterus on the ultrasound, but watching the patients watch the monitor when that flash happens, that's my favorite part, because it's the first real thing the patient can actually see, even if what they're seeing isn't exactly what they think it is, but I digress. This book very briefly goes into IVF towards the end, but it does highlight why women's health is so important and how it can affect the everyday life and one's functionality, and unfortunately, hinder someone's belief in the kind of love they deserve. The end had me so shook. I saw it coming and I didn't at the same time. And I love how it set up the book I'm currently reading, which is Happy Ever After playlist. Actually, as of filming, I already finished it, and that book should have also made this list. It was so good, so fun. I also love how there's a recurring bakery called Nadia Cakes in almost every one of her books. I really appreciate that. I'd love to make cakes for these characters. There is a third book in this little series, and I have it on hold at the library, patiently waiting my turn. All right, now I only have one title on the worst list so far. I'm sure I'll read more terrible books before Christmas comes around, but for now, this was the worst one I've read in a while. I started writing a rant review for this one, but I'm not entirely sure if it's worth the effort and negativity. We'll see, I still haven't decided. Anyway, Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. What the f is wrong with this book? First of all, why is it so long? I tried reading the Kindle version multiple times over the past, I want to say maybe 2 years. I kept picking it up and putting it down and blocking it out, then picking it up again when I see yet another TikTok about how good it was. Just lies, all lies. This book is not good. I'm sorry. Just because something is shocking and there are guns put in questionable places, that doesn't mean what you're reading is good. Problematic does not even begin to describe these characters or the premise of the story. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not one to judge for another's taste in smut. I mean, one of the best and worst books I read last year was about a woman who her front door. Not to mention writing a spicy book of my own. So you see, I am no prude, but this isn't even about being a prude or a freak. This was just a bad book. Now, some people say the experience of reading this book is similar to that of Den of Vipers, but I dare say this was worse. At least Den of Vipers was fun. It wasn't trying to be more than what it was. What you see is what you get. Even the fact that Den of Vipers was 600 plus pages long, it didn't feel like that much of a drag, while Haunting Adeline did. And I'm sorry, but the stalker trope was just not done well, in my opinion. I don't have a list of how it could have been better. I don't. I just know it was lacking. Take You, for example. I read You all the way back in 2016, I think. At that time, that was the worst book I had ever read. Love the show, though. The show did stalker romance very well. Absolutely. This, Haunting Adeline? No. It was a miss. I wouldn't mind being stalked by Joe. He's sweet and creepy and romantic, and he reads and becomes obsessive, and I love that in a man. But Zaid? Ugh. Sorry. I know some TikTok girlies just gasped. Drink some water, you'll be fine. You can have him. More for you. You just take him. I didn't... All right, that was a lot of talking. My mouth hurts. That's all I have for you today, dear viewers. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you're not. I've been vlogging more lately and posting none of it because by the time I sit down to edit it and watch it back, I hate it. So I'm trying to work on that a bit more for you because I want to be here, I want to hang out with you guys, but I don't want to always feel like I have to show up, sit up, perform, you know? I want to be more relaxed sometimes, and I feel like you give me the grace to do that. I just need to find it in myself to allow it to happen, if any of that makes any sense. Anyways, today's shout out goes to everyone who said welcome back on my last vlog. I did not want to post that video. There was even a really weird echo in the audio that almost made me take it down altogether after it was posted. And I'm glad I didn't because things like this, comments like these, it shows me I found a little community online of people who get it. It makes me feel less pressure to make this succeed in whatever way that would appear. Thank you for the warm welcome backs and welcome backs? For the warm welcomes. Warm welcome backs. Anyway, and I hope to post more videos soon. I have more ideas, I just have to let myself think they're good ideas, you know? You know. All right, I'm off to go read 20 extra short books so I can be back on track and stick to my plan because you know how much I love plans. Stay lost, keep reading. Goodbye.